here we are. This is S.x Love Psych3delics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat. Bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
Yeah, that makes me so curious about the writer's process for this, how to be able to be in that space. And then that brings up, how does that influence the writer's life? Do you ever talk to them about, their writing process and how that impacts their ability, what happens in their relationships or their sex
Same way,
life?
you mean like in their personal lives?
Yeah.
At Dipsea, we try and do a pretty good job of being like, if you want to volunteer information about your personal life, because it's like part of the brainstorm, you're so welcome to do that. But we're not like, hey, anyone have any fun stories to tell about their weekend that might influence the room? Like we really try and keep a little bit of a firewall there, because even though we talk about sex all day long and the substance of our Slack messages and emails is would be insane to other people, it is still within the context of we are writers writing stories for our users. And so we walk that line pretty delicately. It happens sometimes, but it needs to be volunteered.
Of course. It's just something that I wonder about, because I know for me, when I'm writing those stories, it's like I'm carrying the energy with me for the rest of the day. And it really does influence my own personal, how I'm relating with a lover or with a partner, because they're getting to receive that spiciness in me. I'm like setting up little scenes, and I'm creating these little moments of not giving it to them. But yeah,
I think, we've been surprised and delighted that there's so many people who not only want to listen to our stories, excuse me, but who also want to write and also want to voice act, because it's such a fundamentally creative and erotic act to make this work. Even if we're doing it in a professional context, it is an erotic act. And you have to be tuned into people, and you have to be tuned into energy to be able to do it really well. And so I get why people want to do it. And it's also really clear how hard it is to get this right. So we care a lot about these stories feeling extremely high quality and not losing you because you get the ick in one random moment. It's really delicate work.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gotten better at it because we've had now 5-6 years of becoming experts at it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of ways that you can really lose people in that too. And so it's just really this science meets art thing that is really interesting. And it's been so fun to see how that evolves over time. We hope that when people listen, they also feel that, right? And we hear that from our listeners. It'll be I listened in the morning on my way to work, and then later in the day on a date, I still carry that energy with me. So it's not necessarily people are listening and self-pleasuring in that moment. That's the only way to listen. People are definitely taking it into their day, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. You bring up the word ick, the ick factor. And I think, when it comes to fantasy or storytelling among, between partners, that is the number one block for somebody. They're afraid that, what they're saying or expressing or embodying is going to cause an ick or repulsion in another person. And so over the years of doing this work, what have been some of those icks, or can you remember what some of those common things were for people?
Totally. They range a huge gamut. So some things we have more control of, like word choice, where we've, with enough repetition, understood that certain words are less interesting to people or more icky to people, and some are more positive.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember some of those?
Yeah. So for example, when we're writing stories that are set back in time. So we did a series that was in the Regency era. Would they use anatomically correct language? I want you to touch my clit. They didn't know those words. A woman didn't understand her own anatomy enough to label it a clitoris. So what are we talking about? Are we now using romance words? Are we calling it my opening? Are we calling it what are we calling it? And so that's a perfect example of okay, we're going to kind of venture into worlds that feel maybe older school than us because it feels right in this story. And then there's plenty of people who are oh my God, calling it an opening makes me feel so gross. I hate that. That's fair. There's not every story is going to work for every person. The best we can do is be this is a Regency story. It's, an empowered woman, but at an olden time, and let people decide that it's the right story for them. Another one that's also hard to control for is just tonal match. So if someone sounds tentative and the other person sounds full on, that's a clear ick, where it's someone's coming on too hard is the classic one. But even how two people respond to each other in a humor way can feel icky, right? If someone's like not like laughing in a way that feels authentic or embodied to the level of the joke that was given, can be really hard, and be like, do these people even like each other? Like, what is their chemistry? And all of our actors are recorded independently. They're recorded in studios all over the country, all over the world. So they're not together looking each other in the eye when they're doing this. We're stitching it together in post-pro. So it's pretty incredible that the chemistry usually sounds like, wow, oh my God, these people are so into each other, because the reality of how it's made is so not like that,
Yeah. Are they talking to each other at the same time, or are they like literally separate? No way.
Literally separate. Partly it's just because scheduling would make that really hard, but partly because the director is in their ear being like, okay, so why don't we do a take that's more like this? Like, can you try and make it sound more soft and breathy? Can you try and make it sound more outward? And they're doing reps on it. So our audio producers have like a better mental command of like flirt language, of sex language, of aftercare language than like, I swear, anyone on the planet.
Okay, so our audience right now listening, these are some of the things that you need to pay attention to when you're creating your own fantasy or stepping into a role. This is really great. Any other ick factors or any other blocks that somebody might be keep aware of?
I think like lingering, if you're a writer and you're writing erotic lit, I would really focus on how you can basically edge the story and edge characters as long as possible, because that payoff is so much sweeter the longer that happens. And so if you can like create a wave and then soften the wave, and create a wave and then soften a wave, and create it and soften it several times, and it feels right in your story, then you've just done something really special.
Same in sex, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep them edging, but not in a way that they drop and get bored. Like there's an art there of how to keep them engaged. What do you think contributes to that engagement or maintaining that rise and fall?
I think that's just the art of it. I think that's just creative people making choices that feel true and right to them.
Yeah. And maybe small satisfactions
totally.
to build it up. Yeah. Or to give it and take it away.
She give it, then she take it away.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to s.xlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on S.x Love Psychedelics.